right? So, and I'm saying this is a man who's been married 16 years. I got married at 19 years old, and I had 4 kids by 24. I know what I'm talking about. This is not theoretical. I come from the projects, all the stuff that you can talk about. No, most people in marriages early because they end up having financial issues because we place so much value on money, and we don't talk about the people who get divorced and regret it.
Everybody before us understood they needed one another. We're the only group of people that feel like we don't need one another. And I'm talking about America as a group. I ain't even talking about black or white. Us in America feel like we don't need nobody. And look where we're going. People don't want to fight in armies no more. Don't nobody want to join the military. Don't nobody want to work no more. Don't nobody want to raise their kids no more. You're pushing it off on other people. Then you look at the government and say, well, government, you need to come in and help me. The government looking back at you like, damn, if you had a husband, I wouldn't have to. And by government, I mean us as people.
Oh, okay. I was about to say, the government is happy as a motherfucker right now.
Because we're the ones paying for it. You literally paying for it. We're paying for it. I wouldn't have to help you if you had somebody there with you.
See, but the truth is that if we're gonna speak about economics and the way the world works, right? Society dictates what industries do, right? And the industry's already setting up the younger generations for it. Virtual reality. They already got us on it with FaceTime and panels and stuff like that. They say it's more beneficial for companies, corporations, and businesses to have you set up as an individual. It's more profitable that way.
Hey, Ricky, you want to know what group of people I never heard complain about rent increases? People that were married in relationships.
I don't worry about no rent. I got a mortgage.
Same different, but you know what I mean. But that's my point, though. You never hear them complaining about rent increases. Guess who you always hear them complain online about? Damn, man, the rent keep going up. People who are single, because you're not meant to go it alone. You're not meant to. This country ain't built for you to do it by yourself. That's why your money don't add up.
You is not the meant. I don't care what nobody say. You're not meant to live this life alone. You're gonna leave it alone, but you ain't meant to live it.
Yeah, our society is not built and designed for 50 and 60-year-old bachelors and bachelorettes.
Nope, it's not built for it at all. It's not set up for it at all.
It's just not, and it's heading that way though. I mean,
that's why I was glad when
y'all literally heading in that way.
That's why I was glad when y'all brought up economics, because the reality is that in today's climate, economically, you definitely can't do it by yourself. There ain't a job. 90% of the jobs pay less than $26 an hour. 90%. That means most of y'all don't make the money to make it.
If that's the case, right? Why are 60% of marriages ending if they're so beneficial
because
to the parties involved?
People think that they can go it alone. It's not about, they think they can do it alone.
But why would they think that, right? If all the evidence is proving that wrong, where would they get that idea from? Like, let's be realistic. 60% of the people who get married are not going to stay married. And we're going to make it seem like, it's just because of some flaw of character. Obviously, we have to accept to some degree, but we have to accept to some degree that a lot of those people that are getting married are leaving the marriage because they got married hoping to see a benefit, and while they're in the marriage, they figured, wait, that benefit isn't there, so I should end this. That would be like if I told you that 60% of the people who bought a particular car, right? If I told you 60% of those people returned that car before they paid up their lease, you would probably tell me that car is pretty shitty and doesn't come with a lot of benefits. Because any car that's benefiting the drivers who are buying it, why would they return the car if it's such a beneficial car? That just doesn't make logical sense.
No, just because
this car is treating me so good. This car is treating the drivers so well. Yet 60% of them are all right, but it's obviously an analogy. What I'm saying people are entering into a contract. Hold on, people are entering into a contract, and at a 60% rate, they're dissolving the contract. How does that make sense that the contract was beneficial if 60% of the people who enter the contract are dissolving it before the end of its term? That doesn't make sense. If 60% of the people who got a lease broke their lease before it was over, you would say that's a shitty apartment building. If 60% of people left anything, if 60% of people failed out of a school, you would say that school's probably shitty. But y'all are trying to convince everyone that something that has a 60% fail rate is beneficial to people on both sides. I don't understand how that makes any type of sense. I can understand a 40% fail rate, a 30, but we have a more than half failure rate.
So Cloud,
and I'll follow up.
Yeah, so Cloud, it's a bad argument, right? So I'll give an example. So fast food is great for you, which is why most Americans consume it. It's because it's good for you. If it wasn't good for you, then most Americans wouldn't consume fast food. That's the logic.
That's not my logic at all. That you're skewing my logic. That's not not my logic. Is if something has a 60%.
Hold on. Let him finish.
So I heard you, and I'm hearing what you're saying, and maybe you intend for it to come off a particular way, but the way that I see what you're saying is that logic. If 60% of marriages are in a divorce, then it must be bad. Marriage has never done anything wrong to you. Marriage itself hasn't done anything wrong. Maybe getting with the wrong person, or maybe like most people do, you didn't even give it enough time because you went into a marriage expecting to get a return before you even put the investment in there. You didn't give it enough time. You didn't give it enough dedication.
These are all assumptions about people's characters that have nothing to do with the stats.
Let me finish, bro.
Hold on. Let me finish.
Right. So, and I'm saying this is a man who's been married 16 years. I got married at 19 years old, and I had 4 kids by 24. I know what I'm talking about. This is not theoretical. I come from the projects, all the stuff that you can talk about. No, most people in marriages early because they end up having financial issues because we place so much value on money. And we don't talk about the people who get divorced and regret it and wish that they would have done something different after their families are broken or the kids are growing up messed up, because if daddy and mama could have just got it together and stuck it out and got through that difficult time, they would have been a lot better off. Right. So you can't look at the number and say because the number is high, then marriage isn't good. No, most people haven't been parented or cultured for marriage. Now, if you actually take that statistic and apply to different groups, well, suddenly the divorce rate is 60%. In different cultures, it's not that high. Some cultures, divorce rate is very low. It's when you have an aggregate score, that's when it looks big. So that's what I'm saying. There's a flaw in your argument. Just because the divorce is high doesn't mean there's something wrong with marriage itself.
Listen, the divorce rate is only low in places where where divorce is illegal. Anywhere where divorce, no fault divorce is legal, there's a high divorce rate. So that should show you that when people have the option to leave their marriages, they overwhelmingly choose to leave them, not to stay in them. Now, I get what you're saying, but all of those arguments require you to have, these are all nuanced. You're talking about maybe this person didn't give it a chance and maybe they didn't work hard enough. And all of that is great. But the stats and the facts still remain that they were in it and they decided to leave. The stats still remain that 6 out of every 10 people or 60 out of every 100 that decide to get married also come to the decision later on that it's a bad idea. That's not even including the stats of the people who get divorced multiple times. So I understand what you're saying, that yes, some people may regret it, but the remarriage rate is not as high as the divorce rate. So if the regret, like you're talking about, was so overwhelming, then the remarriage rate of people getting back married to people they divorced would be extremely high. It's not. All I'm trying to explain to you is that anything else in life, any other metric in life that had a 60% failure rate, we would not call that a beneficial thing by any metric or any regards at all. So I feel as though right now we're romanticizing marriage because, you know, it's been part of society for so long and everybody sees that as the end all. That's the typical way that people live their life. And so that's all people know. And that's why people defend it so hard. But there has to come a point where we look at it honestly and say, yo, if I gave you a parachute and told you there's a 60% chance that this parachute will not deploy, would you jump out the plane? The chances are you're going to say no. Let's just be real. So let's not ignore the 60% failure rate. Let's not ignore that 80% of those 60% failing divorces are initiated by the same people that you're saying are benefiting. Why are 80% of them initiating divorces if they're so happy and so content and benefiting so greatly from these marriages? obviously they don't feel that they're benefiting from the marriages. So I feel like instead of trying to pretend that they are benefiting from these marriages just because we think so, how about we actually look at the incentives and look at society and find a way to make marriages actually more beneficial? Because this lie that they are beneficial at the current state that it is now, that's just wishful thinking. And Sahel, I understand that you're married and you believe that, but Sahel, there are people who have been married longer than you that got divorced. Like, just because your marriage has been successful thus far does not mean your marriage cannot end. So let's not just. So I hate when married people come on and say, "Oh, well, I've been married for 20 years, and so that's somehow evidence that marriages don't fail." That's not evidence of anything. Y'all could your marriage could end 2 years from now. I gotta respond. I'm not trying to come at your marriage personally. I'm just saying that marriages can end at any point, and just because yours has been successful thus far, that's not a fair metric to judge the success of marriages overall by. That's just you, and that's great. That's nice, but that's not that's not 60% of the people out there.
I got your point. So so I hear what you're saying, and you're rattling off knowledge. Like I can't disagree with what you're saying, but your position itself is incorrect. So just like you're saying,
what about my position is incorrect?
Yeah. So you say I listened to your whole thing, and then I came at the end. Just hear me out. So your whole contention is because the marriage the divorce rate is 60%, because of 60%, then what other institution would you go in if it had a failure rate? Marriage doesn't fail. People do. That's okay. So the whole point of these conversations is to equip people to know how to do it. I'll tell you why a lot of marriages fail. Most people have not been conditioned or cultured to be in a successful marriage. As soon as stuff gets difficult, let's take it out to the beginning of the conversation. Let's say you get a baddie, like she bad. If that woman has not got values early on to not esteem herself based off of her looks, and she starts looking for attention, you'll never have a wife, because her currency is her beauty. That means her emotional development has likely stepped at the height or the apex of her attention. That means you're going to have to compete for her attention, even if you're married for her, because it's based off of looks. So the issue is not marriage. Marriage ain't hurt nobody. Marriage ain't robbing nobody. You ain't talk to marriage. It's the failure of people. And that's why when you're talking about this statistic and you're divorcing it from the people who are interacting in it, I think it's a disingenuous argument, right? And yes, I've been married for 16 years, and I'm going to be married to that woman my entire life. If that's not the case, then I'll come back on here and I'll formally apologize. But when I married my wife, I didn't marry her with the intent on divorce. And to take it a step further, let me give you some real. There was a time when we were going to divorce. The papers were signed. But when you remember your vows, and you remember that just because you're having a difficult time in your marriage doesn't mean that this is the end, and that this just means we got to dig a little bit deeper, love a little bit harder, try a little bit stronger. We can make it. I'm evidence that marriages go through difficulties, but if you work together, you can pull through it, because that's what marriage is all about.